So Tunda, 2024 season, how are we doing? How have we recovered from this amazing season looking ahead to 2025?
Well, as you say, it has been a recovery. Um, I still can't get over the last race of the season, Abu Dhabi. Leclerc climbing up the ranks. We already talked about this, but it's still, now thinking back to it, it's just that feeling, that hope, that momentary hope of winning the championship with Ferrari and with Carlos Sainz and Leclerc together. The constructors could have won their way, but as we all know, it did not. And McLaren, who were the surprise of the season, ran away with it. And now the big question remains, what will the situation be come the first race weekend in Australia this year, 2025? And I think today we're looking at, what happened last season? What did we predict correctly? And where did we completely miss the mark? And then we might just try and predict some things for the upcoming season, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, phenomenal 2024 season. Yeah, one for the history books, I think, and the ending as well. Even though the drivers' title was pretty much wrapped up.
Yep.
I think Verstappen won it in Las Vegas, so there was nothing really to play for in terms of the drivers' championship, at least for the big crown. There was still a little bit to play for between Leclerc and Norris in the last race. But as you said, Leclerc coming back from the field, and Norris pretty much dominating the weekend, as he was supposed to with many other races in the 2024 season. But yeah, let's kind of go back to the summer break, because after the Belgian Grand Prix, we have made some predictions, and the predictions were regarding the final positions in the constructor standings. And also we were trying to determine how the pace order will be, basically. And I must say, Tunda, you have done a really good job, because I might have not believed you right there and then. Maybe the Ferrari delusion, as we kind of call it sometimes.
Well,
but yeah, you are the only one.
The Ferrari delusion. Sometimes it's a hindrance, but sometimes it does help you out a lot, because once again, hope is an important part of Formula One and any other sport. But just to kind of look back at what was the Constructors' Championship standing right after the Belgian Grand Prix. So in first place, we had a Red Bull with 408 points. Pretty solid lead over McLaren, who were in second with 366. Then Ferrari third, 345. And last, well, not last, but in our top four, Mercedes with 266, 100 behind McLaren. But we also should mention that this was at a point where Mercedes were at a very good point in the season.
Yeah, they won I think they won 3 of the last 4 races, counting till Belgium. They won in Belgium. They were pretty much destined to a 1-2 until the disqualification of Russell. They won in Silverstone, which was, I think, the 2 races before, because between that was Hungary, I believe. And before that was Austria, which Russell has won due to the crash of the Titan. But yeah, as you say, Mercedes was on the rise. McLaren was finding a lot of form, seemed to be like the car to beat. And Ferrari, on the other hand, were nowhere at that point.
That was the unfortunate point in the season with the triple header not too long before, with basically 0 points for Charles Leclerc.
Hmm.
after winning the Monaco Grand Prix. It hurts just to talk about it. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that at this point, people were very optimistic about Mercedes,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
pessimistic about Ferrari, and McLaren. Well, it was anybody's guess whether they would catch Red Bull or not. But my guess, my personal guess, was a correct one because I did predict that the Red Bull would fall and tumble down the order to third place, being overtaken by both McLaren and Ferrari in the first and second, respectively, with Mercedes staying in P4. But I think you were a little more optimistic about Mercedes than I was. What was your prediction?
Yeah. Well, to start with something very positive, I also predicted that McLaren is going to win the Constructors' Championship. But I predicted Mercedes to be P2 in the standings because I just thought that they finally figured their car out.
Yeah.
And it seems to be very far from the truth because I don't think the only race that they have won after Belgium was Las Vegas, right? I think that their season was very much up and down, and they didn't sort their car out as we expected them to. So yeah, I probably got influenced by the Mercedes 3 wins in 4 races, but I predicted Red Bull to be in P3. No, actually, I did. I predicted Red Bull to be P3, which was correct, but I predicted Ferrari to be in P4 because I just felt that they're not going to figure their car out until the very, very late in the season. So, which happened in 22, 23, or 23.
But
yeah.
Luckily for everybody involved, well, apart from you were not correct. Ferrari did manage to come back in Monza, and
yeah, true.
And and they were more consistent. They were more consistent towards the end of the season, but not at the very end. They managed to get there even before. But now you should hope that Ferrari get their shit together as Lewis Hamilton. Your number one has transferred to, as we all know, as we famously all know, revealed more than a year ago that Lewis Hamilton would leave Mercedes for Ferrari in 2025. Only a couple of weeks ago, like 3 weeks ago, he went to Maranello, went to the factory, met everyone, took some pictures in front of Enzo Ferrari's old house. And it really seems, like they're going all in on Lewis Hamilton with all the promo, all the videos, all the photo shoots, but also paying attention to probably what he has to say about the car, which is what he will actually care about. They can take 100 pictures of him and post them on Instagram with dramatic music, but if they don't listen to his feedback about the car, then it's all kind of useless. But it seems like they will be listening, unlike Mercedes have in the past.
Yeah, hopefully. And also, let's just take a second to appreciate the huge aura about just Hamilton joining Ferrari. Have you seen the videos? Him being on the track, the Tifosi, everyone just it's a big move, and it just proves that 2 huge brands, Lewis Hamilton, the big name, Ferrari, the big name, history, everything behind it, like they join forces after what has been an eternity of rivalry. And I think there are a lot of expectations. And it feels like that if there's not going to be the drivers and constructors title in this partnership at least once, it's going to probably feel like a failure to most of the people, and maybe likely even the 2 of them, the Ferrari and Hamilton themselves. So I'm really excited to see what 2025 will bring, because there has already been some private tests, right? Maranello or in Fiorano. And it seemed like from some reports, Hamilton was feeling much more comfortable in the Ferrari than in any iteration of the ground effect Mercedes,
Yeah.
which I guess it's a good sign. They have done, together with McLaren and Alpine, I believe they have done a 2026 tire test in Barcelona. I mean, we cannot read into the lap times much because it's basically a preparation for 2026 with the more narrow tires, and
Yep.
they were also simulating a lot less downforce on the car. So pretty much in Barcelona, the Ferrari car was running Monza level wings. So yeah, and apparently Hamilton has crashed. And hear me out. I've heard a rumor that every time Hamilton has crashed in the new team, he has gone in to win the championship. So
Yeah,
which,
it might just be an omen. It might be an omen of
this is the season.
of this being the season for Ferrari and Hamilton. And or it might be just the fact that Hamilton really pushes the limits of the cars when he first encounters them. And those could go hand in hand. If he pushes the limits, if he's always on the limit, he's bound to win something if the car allows it. But what do you think about the potential of Ferrari this year and Hamilton with the Ferrari, and especially also with in relation to Leclerc, who's been the Scuderia's #1 golden boy for many years now, the longest contract ever in the history of the team, and now they're bringing in a 7-time world champion with with Lewis Hamilton. What do you think this will be like?
Well, I think that the expectations are so high that it would be hard for us to get surprised about any other outcome. But yeah, I really think that, first of all, I think that Leclerc is gonna enjoy this partnership from one of you because he's gonna learn from Lewis Hamilton. He has already had a great teammate, for example, of Sebastian Vettel, who was a 4-time world champion, right? And I think he has taken a lot with him, from Vettel. So I think that Leclerc is gonna be kind of excited, but at the same time, I think both of them are gonna be a little worried and kind of just wanting to beat each other. But I think the potential is huge because we know Leclerc, as they call him in Italy, El Predestinato or something like this, right?
Yeah.
He was always meant to be in that Ferrari. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting, first of all, to see how their rivalry is going to evolve over the season, because I feel like both of them are very hard racers but fair racers. I don't think that, like both of them could have been at some points bullied by Max Verstappen. But
true.
Yeah, remembering, for example, Austria 2019, I've been there and it was pretty crazy to see Verstappen overtaking Leclerc in that fashion. But it's also going to be interesting to see how the car evolves, because apparently Ferrari is keeping only 1% of the parts from 24. They're changing their philosophy of the front suspension as well. So yeah, I feel like in terms of marketing, it's going to be the strongest team on the grid, because pretty much I think it is the strongest pairing drivers on the grid. And both of them are also fairly popular, And in terms of the driving, it's going to be really interesting, because Leclerc is an amazing qualifier, probably one of the best, if not the best, on the grid.
Yeah.
Hamilton having 104, 105 poles could be argued as well, but last season he has had a terrible run of qualifying, so it will be interesting to see whether he can fix that, because I think that's going to be very crucial this year with the pecking order being likely very close. What do you think the potential is? Do you think that this is the year for Ferrari, finally?
Well, I think it's really important what you said about the fact that they're only keeping a very small number of parts and philosophy from last year, because that can mean that they're, because we all know 2026 new regulations, it's gonna be very important to nail that 2026 car, also with the engine, with the chassis, with everything. So Ferrari could be thinking, okay, let's change this car 2024, 2025. We saw what worked, we saw what didn't last year. But my fear is because unless Ferrari really delivers in the first few races and they're actively fighting for wins or at least podiums, which I still, I think that's very possible. But if they don't, I think it's very likely that they could just be like, okay, well, let's just focus on developing the 2026 car and abandon the 2025 one. And just because if you're not winning, if you're not fighting for the wins in a field as competitive as the 2025 will be, probably with, Mercedes, McLaren, and whatever Red Bull will bring, then you might not want to waste your time and resources on trying to develop that car when you know that it won't lead anywhere. Now, of course, that's just speculation. It's entirely possible that, even if they don't perform at the very start, they will still put a lot of effort. But I think it could also be risky, because if it's for Hamilton's and Leclerc's morale, but Hamilton coming into the team for the first time, if the first season doesn't go that great, it might not be the best for the overall atmosphere in the team.
True. We'll see about that, because it's really hard to predict, how the 2025 season is going to go. But I think a lot of it can be determined from, usually it's happened like this many times, end of regulations or one set of regulations. Look at 2021, right? Like if you looked at 2020, you could kind of see the strongest teams. And it was pretty clear that the only other team that could potentially come close to Mercedes would be Red Bull.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of 2024, we had 4 teams that were like, it was pretty much track dependent to where which one was stronger, right? Let's just come back to the predictions that we made even before that, because we predicted the pace.
True.
The pace order for the end of 2024 come Abu Dhabi. And looking at your predictions, you have had an interesting prediction, because you predicted Red Bull to be the quickest, which I think was definitely not the case towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
Red Bull has fallen off, quite a bit. Like the only saving grace was some upgrades they kind of wasn't maybe upgrades, but they kind of just were doing some fixes for the floor of the car, and I think that came in Azerbaijan. And since then, because until then they couldn't turn the car, the car was just understeery, the car was very bad in slow speed corners. Then they found some fix, and the car was so. The only win, I believe, was Verstappen in Brazil after the summer break, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a hell of a win. And that was not really down to the car.
That was not down to the car at all.
Yeah. So you predicted Red Bull P1. You predicted Ferrari to be P2, which I think could have been true at the end of the season. And you had McLaren P3, which turned out to be the car to beat pretty much almost everywhere, except for some, outliers, exceptions. But generally it was the fastest car through the 2024 season, I believe. And Mercedes 4th, which, I think that was true.
Yeah.
Unless you look at races like Las Vegas, then, as we say, it was track dependent.
No, I mean, I know. I remember I was talking about this whole full circle moment coming from the start of the season going to the end. The situation is gonna be the same. I thought it would be poetic or something. It ended up not being the case, as you say. But what was your pace prediction?
Well, mine. Oof. I predicted
Even
McLaren
worse.
to be the quickest
Okay.
car,
Fair
which
enough.
I think was a solid prediction after what was Belgium. I predicted Red Bull to be in P2, which, probably it depended on the track, but wasn't the case. Ferrari P3 and Mercedes P4. So maybe if I switched Ferrari with Red Bull, I would have been pretty much right. To some extent, in some tracks, we would have both been correct, because...
I do admire your dedication to Mercedes, that you in the standings predictions you put them P2, but in the pace you put them P4. So I don't know what you thought was gonna happen.
Sole drivers, man. Sole drivers.
In the middle of the season, but yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe I didn't expect Hamilton to be really so off in the qualifying. Maybe I expected, I expected it maybe to go a little bit like 2022, 2023, where pretty much every single race you could see Russell and Hamilton being just bagging the points. So I didn't necessarily think that Mercedes is going to be the quickest car or the quicker car towards the end, but I just thought the margins are going to be smaller. And usually is the case that Mercedes is kind of, they're just saving their upgrades. They're not usually upgrading towards the end of the season. They're usually not really, they're just kind of maximizing the car they already have. So, and that is the same, or that is the opposite of what Ferrari did last year, for example, right? They kind of were doing different experiments, even 24, 23, both of the years, they were doing experiments. Maybe, I think in 24, they did a floor prep for 25 in Qatar, I believe. So, yeah, I just thought that Mercedes is going to bag enough points until maybe like Brazil, where they could kind of fall off a little bit again. But yeah, we didn't. I mean, your prediction was just better. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In terms of the constructors and in terms of the pace, I've got the point here. Didn't score absolutely perfect scores, but that's okay. And
that's okay.
Off of that, do you think the pace order? How do you see it for 25? Do you think it's gonna be something completely different, or how do you think we're gonna? What are we up to?
Question. That's a great question for 2025. Because as you said, it's anybody's game. It's anybody's game this year, because last year it was so close at the end. So whatever was done in the factories over the winter will have changed everything. Red Bull, they don't have Adrian Newey anymore, but they still are a very competent racing team. Hopefully. So they might have learned from 2024 and might just bring a rocket ship once again. Who knows? On the other hand, McLaren, they were on a roll. And there's no reason why we should expect that to stop. But then Ferrari, looking very good towards the end of the season with very capable drivers and a completely new car. We have, basically no reference points to that. And Mercedes, with, a lot of experiments being done the last 2 years. They might have just spent all their research points in the winter and just put it all for this year, unless they're focusing on 2026. And then you have Aston Martin with Adrian Newey, who's probably focusing on 2026. That is true, but you never know. They might have been cooking up something as well. Which is not answering your question as well at all, I mean. But that is just to say that, just looking at the contenders this year, there are no clear favorites, I would say. But maybe, since last time we predicted the end of the season, and we did so in the middle of the season, after, during the summer break, maybe we can predict what the pace and the standings will be during the summer break. Look at the midpoint of the season, which, as we saw last year, doesn't necessarily have to reflect the rest of the season.
Fair enough. Well, I think that, as you maybe mentioned, Red Bull, I genuinely think that they're going to fall off. And not only because Adrian Newey left, but I also feel like they have lost more of their competent people. But also it seems that they kind of lost direction a little bit, because if you look at different potential upgrades they were using, they couldn't just make the car do what they wanted to, and they have a super narrow operating window, seems like. And speculations have been that the narrow window will be pretty much kept, which I guess that's what you want when you need peak performance. And that might be something that Liam Lawson is going to struggle with a lot, being the pretty much full-time F1 rookie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we haven't even spoken of the drivers, right? Because we have so many interesting driver changes as well. But if we want to, do you want to go through only the top 4, or do we want to go through the whole top 10 of the constructors?
Let's do the whole list for the mid-season championship standings.
Okay.
For the pace, we can stick to the top 4 or 5 so that it doesn't get too confusing. But
sure. Well, so in terms of the constructor standings, I think that until the middle of the season or until the summer break, I think that McLaren will be leading the constructors title. I think that second will be Ferrari. Third will be Mercedes. Fourth will be actually Red Bull. I think a big surprise could be P5, because I'm thinking of putting Alpine in P5. Because let's not forget, the turnaround they made last season was spectacular. They went from being off by half a second in Q1, or even more, through the rest of the field. They were 19th and 20th. They were plumb last, to actually finishing P6 in the constructors last season, that's a big achievement. But the only worry could be the team pairing, right? The driver pairing.
Yeah.
Because we have Jack Doohan. There has been a lot of rumors.
Yeah. He might get sacked. Might get sacked very soon.
Yeah. For Colapinto, which is interesting. Not even a rookie, and already being his seat being under question. So yeah, not a great start, I guess. Maybe not being completely freed up, but maybe Jake Doohan will surprise us, because Abu Dhabi, I don't think that was a huge reflection of what he could really do. So after preseason testing, we might get a better idea. But he's up against Pierre Gasly, who I think is a very solid driver.
Yeah,
proved himself many times in different teams, except for Red Bull. But
and they're both bold. That's for aerodynamics through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, lacking straight line speed, gotta compensate for it somehow, eh?
Exactly.
Well, I think that P6 is gonna be Aston Martin.
Okay.
I don't think they're gonna have a great car, because it seemed like they were once again lost with their car last year. Seemed like nothing they really applied again made much of a difference. They started the 2024 season fairly well. They were seemingly pace-wise a little bit faster than perhaps Mercedes was. But then they fell off in a terrible fashion. And I think it was after the upgrade in Imola, right? That it seemed like it suited Stroll for some reason a lot more than it did Alonso. And we know who delivers the points for Aston Martin anyway. So it seemed like it hindered Alonso's ability to field the car, to really extract the most out of it. So, but I believe they're still going to be ahead of the backmarkers or the super midfield drivers. I think that this year could be a little bit different when it comes to, the first 4 and the rest. I think there could be kind of a middle group forming up, which could be maybe Alpine and Aston Martin. But I've got them in P6. P7, I have Williams. P8, I have what are they calling it again? Racing Bulls now, or
Racing Bulls it is, I think.
Yeah, it's not Visa Cash App anymore, is it? I think that came off with Ricardo as well. So I think they're gonna be in P8. I think P7, Williams has such a strong driver lineup.
Yeah.
And it feels like From what we've seen from the car launch, it seems like they're going with more of an evolution than a super big of a revolution of a car, which I guess for 2025 makes sense because, you know, where do you want to take the revolution to in in the last year of the regulation? And even though they weren't pretty much nowhere last year compared to the year before. And Carlos Sainz, I think he's going to be delivering those points quite consistently. So P8, I had Racing Bulls, Sonoda, and Hajar. I'm really excited to see Hajar because I think they're very similar to Yuki Tsunoda when it comes to attitude and maybe some radio messages, but I don't know. We'll see about that. But I think that there were. Did he drive the post-season test in Abu Dhabi?
I'm not sure.
Because I think there were a lot of speculation, or there were many comments made by different teams that Hajar was actually as fast or faster than Tsunoda in the race trim. So that'll be an interesting one to see as well, because Yuki Tsunoda seems to be in that team forever already, which is a junior team. So I don't know. He might serve as a benchmark to Dr. Helmut Marko. P9, I think it's going to be Haas. We've got the rookie Ollie Behrman, and we've got Esteban Ocon. So a completely new driver lineup for Haas as well. So I think they're going to get really different feedbacks, new feedbacks. So I think they're just going to be settling in, in the car and focusing on the 2026 season.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the last place, I have Kick Sauber, or the
very
future
unexpected.
Albi. Yeah. So how would your differ, or what do you think of this?
Ben,
prediction?
I think it's a very, very reasonable pecking order that you've outlined here. You have a lot of fact-based, reasonable assumptions here.
Only facts, man. Nothing else on Final Straight F1.
Exactly.
Never. That's never what you're
It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Which is why I feel like now I have to diverge and
go for it.
And give a not fact-based, not reasoning-based, but maybe a hopium based order. So this is because we have to realize this is the middle of the season, right? As we saw last year, the middle of the season can look very different from the start or the end. It could have been some mid-season updates or early season updates that completely transform a team's performance. So I will boldly predict that in P1, in the middle of the season, we will see Ferrari.
The
don't
do that, Tunda. Don't do that. Don't give people hope.
Well, I'm not saying they're gonna stay there, or be there all year. But I think if we think of the big picture, this is where Ferrari were at its weakest last year. These races that preceded the summer break was their weak points. And I would think, there are different approaches, but they could focus on the weak points from their 2024 season to see what went wrong. They have the data. They have everything. So these might be this year the races where they do well, actually, which could also be related to the fact that the car is completely new. They might have said, okay, let's see what we did wrong and do the exact opposite. Could that mean that it's all going to be fucked up and Leclerc is going to be like 10th in Monaco? Could be. Could be. But could they do much better elsewhere? Yeah, sure. So for the dream team of Lewis and Charles, I will predict P1 for the summer break. But of course, we can't discount the performance of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. They will be very consistent, I feel like, as well. And they will not be lower than P2. So I will be saying P2 for McLaren in the middle of the year. But I also think that there might be a couple, little mistakes, strategy, something else. Maybe Oscar gets faster again, as he did last year. And he's really, breathing on Lando's neck, and
Hopefully in Hungary.
hopefully in Hungary. And there might, who knows, maybe there might be a crash. That's
Finally.
like 25 points, even more points down the drain. Ferrari. And
yeah, that sounds like a master plan.
Yeah, exactly. And last year we saw that, these are areas that McLaren still needs to improve in. Strategy, team management. I mean, yeah, they didn't make a lot of progress during the season, but I think you're never gonna completely eradicate these problems from year to year. So I would say that we could see at least one incident or incident in the first half of the
Hopefully
year.
not an incident.
Hopefully not an incident. But then P3, I do agree with Mercedes. Mercedes with their Kimi Antonelli and George Russell, who both will really want to prove themselves, I feel like. Kimi to prove that he can fill the big shoes left by Lewis Hamilton. George, that he is faster than a rookie. So P3, I'm saying Mercedes. I agree with you. But now Red Bull. Red Bull is a big question mark because obviously, I mean, yeah, I did just say that they might bring a rocket ship, but they also might bring a tractor. And
exactly,
we know that rookies don't do that great at Red Bull. I mean, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous to call Liam Lawson a rookie at this point. But, he hasn't had a full season in Formula One. We saw how Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, how they fared when put in this situation. So I think that's a big question mark. Either Liam Lawson will blow everyone out of the water and he will be right there with Max Verstappen, or it will be a disaster and it will cost Red Bull even more points than with the situation with Sergio Perez the last few years, which now, with a weaker car might be very detrimental. So I think Red Bull could potentially be even lower than P4. But for now...
Whoa.
Yeah.
You think that Red Bull could actually... Oh, that's interesting. So,
yeah,
who do you think would be the best candidate to overtake Red Bull if that was to happen?
So, I mean, there are different levels of delusion that we are working here with.
Sure, yeah.
So, depending on your faith in Adrian Newey, James Vowles, Yuki Tsunoda, we could make some very, very crazy predictions. But let's do it the other way around. I don't think that Sauber could. I don't think Racing Bulls could.
Oh man, yeah.
I don't think Haas. But Alpine or Aston Martin or Williams. This is maybe we're getting into a very weird, corners of predictions here. But I will still put Red Bull in P4, but I think that they won't be that far off from P5, who, Williams. Let's say that Williams Racing will be P5 in the middle of in the summer season. This just destroyed my whole lineup, my whole prediction. But you gotta have faith in Carlos Sainz and James Vowles and Alex Albon. So, and there is a scenario, I think, a possible one where it'll turn out that Carlos Sainz, that Alex Albon, despite being very fast and a good driver, that there is actually more potential in the Williams car, and Carlos Sainz will somehow bring it out, score a couple of good points, and end up P5. Is that likely? No, I don't think so, but I already said it. So let's continue.
Let's carry on.
P6, I think Aston Martin won't fall down too much. I mean, I think Adrian Newey will be focusing on 2026.
Yeah,
They will give Alonso
agree.
a big wad of cash and say, "Just wait a year, just wait a year, please," and then
One more. One
we'll
more.
have fun, and then we'll have fun. Uh, then P7, you know, Alpine, yeah. I think Alpine might. I don't think they will improve that much, but I think P7 is realistic with their recent improvements.
Reasonable.
And P8, I'm gonna say Haas.
Hmm.
You know, everybody expected them to do very poorly last year, but then due
Yeah,
to also the driver pairing, they
true.
did quite well. But I think Ollie
True.
Berman and Esteban Ocon, we saw Ollie Berman's potential. Esteban Ocon is a good driver, so I think they could get into P8, P9. I think Racing Bulls.
Hmm.
There's just not a lot of performance there in the car. Hajar might surprise everyone, and Tsunoda is a good driver, but I don't think the car will allow them to do a lot. And then last, Kick Sauber. I think there we can agree.
Yeah.
And until Audi comes in with their engine.
Benetto works his Ferrari engine magic.
Exactly.
Tricking the fuel sensors like they did in 2019. Making the car fly.
But that is my, I would say, quite bold prediction for the mid-year situation. I'm excited to be completely off or very correct. Who knows?
I mean, I was laughing at you for predicting what you predicted in Belgium, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna laugh this time. I'm just gonna, or maybe just a little bit. But the only thing I'm gonna say is anything is possible this year, pretty much, apart from Kick Sauber winning the constructors title.
Yeah.
Now,
And
if they win, jeez, yeah. But even last year, when you look at the qualifying, I think can't remember which race that was, maybe Austria or something. But if you looked at Q1, it was, I think, one of the closest qualifyings in F1 history in terms of from first to last. It was less than a second, which in F1, it's, I remember the days of, I don't know, when there was like 11 or 12 teams and the gap could have been easily over 3 seconds, So some of the cars were so bad that they were even as slow as F2 cars, like at some point, which that's a lot to say. But I feel like with the same regulations, you could have, the same as Aston Martin did from 22 to 23, right? They were, I think, P7 in the constructor standings in 2022. I think they lost by like 1 point to, who was it that time? Haas or someone? No, could have, but doesn't matter. But the year after, they were pretty much the second fastest car for a lot of the season, or the third fastest car, depending. Yeah, I think it was the third fastest car, depending on the track, of course. But there were many times they were second after Red Bull in 23, right? So there could be a team, as you mentioned, Williams. It could be Alpine making jumps. So it is super exciting, and I can't wait for the season to start. I can't wait for the preseason testings. It's gonna be an epic season, and I just hope that, for example, McLaren will not come with a rocket ship of a car and will just dominate the season, because that would ruin a lot of our expectations. But I think that 2025 season will be the one to remember, maybe similar as it was in 2021, or
could
very
well be.
Or
I might have to make a very large donation to Williams Racing. I completely forgot that they crashed so many times last year. I'm just now remembering all those incidents and the fact that they're probably broke as hell right now. But that is James. I'll give James Vowles a call and
Right, and
We
will
can
see.
figure something out.
We're gonna.
But
figure
I agree with your sentiments. I think that this will be a great season. It will be very exciting from the very start.
Yeah.
Probably, hopefully, unlike a lot of the season that we've seen in the past
Mm.
past few years. And we will be there. We will be there throughout the year, making predictions. Some of them bold, some of them off by a lot. But we will take you through the season and make sure that you know what's going on.
Exactly. We'll cover everything. And before we go, let's try and make one crazy prediction for the year of 2025, for the 2025 season. We will look at the pecking order and we will try to predict the constructor standings, I think, until the constructor's title, the driver's title, but I think we'll try to predict that after the preseason testing where we get a better idea of how things really are. But for now, let's just try and make one crazy prediction for the 2025 season. Do you have one?
Oh, it's really putting me on the spot here. That's
my intention.
My crazy prediction for the 2025 season. Oh, and my hope, I would say my hope for the 2025 season is that we will, like in 2021, have a race until the finish line and have the championship be decided in Abu Dhabi.
Wow.
In the last race.
That's a good prediction.
Yeah. And I really hope it comes true.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What about yours? What about yours?
I want you to get that point. That's good. My prediction is that in the F1 2025 season, we will have 8 or more different F1 Grand Prix winners.
That was the other one I was thinking of. 8 or more is crazy, actually.
Yeah,
8 or more
because
is crazy.
Last year we got 7.
Yeah.
We got 7 multiple race winners, by the way, right? So
yeah.
Whether it means that Antonelli is going to become the youngest F1 Grand Prix winner, basically exceeding what Max Verstappen did in 2016 in Barcelona. I think he only has the first 3 or 4 races to do that, so I will have to wait and see. Or it could be Liam Lawson winning his maiden race. So, or it could be completely someone different. Like it was almost Esteban Ocon in Brazil. Those crazy conditions. Was one of the candidates in the middle of the race to win the race. But yeah, I think that we're going to have 8 or more different winners like it was, I think, in 2012. So yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, I hope your prediction comes true as well.
Yeah.
Well,
it would be awesome.
Either way, even if they don't, this is bound to be one for the history books. And we are very excited to go through it with you. And we will come back even before the season, talk about pre-season testing, talk about Drive to Survive, which the new season is coming out once again. I'm curious to see how they fit all that happened last year into those few episodes.
Silly season.
And new liveries as well. So stay tuned. And once again, we will come back with the race review in Melbourne after kicking off this wonderful season that's ahead of us. So stay tuned.
Make sure you watch the 2025 season with Final Straight F1. And thank you for watching. And see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.